I did ask my family. I did ask some friends. I got their feedback, and based on that, I decided that I could or should take this case. Guilty is the result of a judicial process in which either a jury finds beyond reasonable doubt that somebody did it, or somebody admits to doing it and pleads guilty themselves. Nobody charged is guilty until somebody says they're guilty. If you're asking whether or not people should represent people who, quote, did it, end quote, that's more complicated, because very often somebody is charged who did something, but not it.
I'd like to address an issue that's been in the news over and over again. Until now, I've chosen to take the high road. I've chosen not to respond in detail. But that changes today. Since that report came out, no one is above the law, including myself.
Her lawyer, Abbe Lowell, celebrity attorney, tends to represent Democrats. He had Menendez, he had Hunter Biden. He doesn't have a great recent track record, let's be frank.
No offense to Donald Trump's son-in-law. I think he represented Jared Kushner, too.
All right, so, he's been around this guy a little bit. So this is the thing, and I'm sure he's not hurt, and I'm sure he's a fine lawyer. I mean, he got where he got. I'm sure if you really dig into him, which I haven't, but if you really dig into his history, I'm sure he's got all kinds of wins. You don't get to that level by losing all the time. So there's that. But correct me if I'm wrong here, if I'm reading the fact pattern accurately and the chronology accurately, according to what you lay out at whitecollarfraud.com. In protecting her here, or attempting to protect her, he puts out all of this stuff about, hey, she said in an email in black and white in big, bold, capital letters, I do not intend to occupy this location in Virginia as my primary residence. But doesn't that end up hurting her? Because 2 weeks later, when she has to sign the paper, the affidavit in question, she says she is going to occupy it. So doesn't highlighting the fact that she said A, but then did B 2 weeks later, just further jam her up?
Yes, would probably happen. Here's my guess, okay? Everything else I told you is fact, but when I say opinion. This is my opinion. I think that she was in a rush to respond to the DOJ inquiry, and she pushed them to write this hastily written response to it without actually researching the issues that are involved. In other words, by doing what he did, he actually buried his client instead of helping his client. He implicated her for mortgage fraud. Because if you read what she had written, her lawyer had written in response, that basically seals the deal. She committed fraud.
Is there setting up an intent defense? I made a mistake. I didn't mean it. That's not going to fly.
Doesn't fly under federal rules.
That's not going to fly.
It's a false statement to a bank.
Oops is not going to fly here.
It doesn't matter under federal rules.
Okay, and let me ask you another question now, because you brought up a fact.
She's trying the lazy reader defense.
Well, and she's trying to apply. She's trying to. What she's trying to do is she's trying to try it in the public sphere. That's why she got a lot more public right after it came out, and she started going to rallies and everything else, because she wants to couch it as she's being, a victim of revenge thanks to Donald Trump, etc. But I think people do see through it because the facts are very compelling, and you've been laying them out, and you've been boxing her in. But I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Sammy, because this is a salient point, and you kind of blew past it. And I think this is important because a lot of people don't realize this. Now, I think Abbe Lowell shouldn't be letting her talk because, as you just said, she essentially just made a tacit admission that I did it, but I didn't mean it. All right. Crazy right there. Number two, they blew the timeline. They said, well, she said in bright letters, capital letters, that she wasn't going to intend to reside in Virginia. But then all you have to do is look at the timeline, and she did say that 2 weeks later when she signs the affidavit, which is the operative fact here. So there's that. I think there's a third mistake here that you alluded to. You're telling me that Lowell pointed to a different document as the thing that supposedly cleans this up, that changes her intent because it happened after the affidavit, or at least closer to the affidavit. You're going to have to lay that out for me, but it's actually an email that's not even pertinent? What is that?
No, there was an email that he said that was sent after the affidavit.
Okay.
But when he put together his response, The email that he claimed that was after the affidavit was one of the 2 emails before the affidavit.
So he just either got a fact wrong or they're playing games with the court.
Well, in respect, let's say he produces that document.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, okay, it doesn't sanitize the situation.
All right, hold on. All right, yeah. I get that.
On our sworn statement.
I get that. She made a false representation no matter when this thing falls. I get that. But I got to tell you, and I said the court, there isn't a court attached yet. It's in the grand jury. But, you know, you don't make that mistake. All right. You're talking about, you are Abbe Lowell. You're a big time attorney. You're representing the Attorney General of New York State. You don't point to a document that doesn't do what you said it does. You just don't do that. You're setting yourself up for a beheading. And I'm just telling you, I've been in enough cases to know that that is something that you don't get wrong. So it's the fact that you dug that out and said, well, he's pointing to an email from a couple of weeks earlier that doesn't do what he claims. The idea that it's a mistake, could it happen? Sure, it could happen to anybody. But I got to tell you, I'm skeptical of that. I think that he's playing games a little bit. He's trying to point to things that don't exist. He's playing with the timeline because he's trying to buy time to figure out what the hell to do here. Because frankly, it doesn't look that good for her.
He didn't need to buy time. He should not have responded publicly. He should have engaged in.
Well, that's not. I mean, she's got to be asking him. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, the client calls the shots. You know that.
The client calls the shots. But you know something? When I was a criminal back in the day, many, many years ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, okay?
Almost 50 years now.
I had lawyers that told me, Sammy, shut up. This is the way.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they and you know, look, if you tell the lawyer you got to get out there and represent me here, they're going to have to say, we don't know what, we're speculating, we don't know what the motives are here. But all I can say is this, from where I sit, them talking here has done them no favors, because it seems to me like what they've done, and if I'm sitting with a prosecution is, I look at their public statements, I say, they're talking about stuff that doesn't exist, and they're playing games with the timeline. To me, that is a tell. And I start to smell blood.
She never mentioned the purported subsequent email when she's been talking to the press. It's like.
Right. So it doesn't exist from her perspective. Look, I can just tell you this, Sammy. You're interviewing a perp or interrogating a perp, which is a little bit of a higher standard, right? You're going at the guy a little bit. And his story starts to change. And he starts to alluding to things that don't exist. You start to get your spidey sense going crazy, because that's a real tell that, look, this person's hiding something. And I think that's a tell. I think that they haven't done themselves any favors, and they might have realized it because they have since kind of shut up. Am I wrong?
Well, the lawyer shut up. She's still opening up her big mouth, making this like political retribution, which it's not. But even if it is political retribution, even if I burned down a firehouse yesterday, the facts on the ground shows that she's guilty. It doesn't matter. She committed a crime, and there's no excuse. Let me give you an idea. She claims Donald Trump retribution. Well, you know something? She started committing mortgage fraud on a Brooklyn property in 2001 when Donald Trump was still a Democrat.
Abbe Lowell, Letitia James attorney, he sent a letter last month to the DOJ on these investigations.
That's just right out of the Abbe Lowell playbook. Remember, the Hunter Biden investigation and prosecution and convictions, those were political as well, according to Abbe Lowell, and Hunter Biden was really guilty. So it is lawyers have to do this. They have to be zealous, and I'm fine with that. I don't know that attacking Pam Bondi and this Department of Justice is going to be a great idea as far as if the facts don't play out as Abbe Lowell might see them. I don't know that Tish James is going to get much grace from this DOJ if they're continually attacked by her lawyer.
So this is very early in the investigation. Things are just getting started. But when you look at what they are investigating, you look at these cases that they have their eyes on, what type of charges could possibly follow?
Well, so there is a grand jury convened in the Eastern District of Virginia, which is Northern Virginia, right outside of D.C. And then the FBI, at least it's being reported, is looking into the Manhattan dwelling in New York, and that would end up probably with the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office if a grand jury were to convene yet. We don't know if that's ongoing or not. But essentially, folks need to understand that a grand jury does not convene just because we call it to. There has to be some predication. By predication, I mean some evidence that a crime may have been committed, and then the grand jury determines if in fact a crime has been committed. The real, Abbe Lowell, who's Tish James's lawyer, has come out and said that this is political retribution. What I would flip and say is that it would be a miscarriage of justice if DOJ were to just spike this case and not go forward with it simply because there's a Democrat who's the AG in New York who targeted the current president, President Trump, in what is widely regarded as a ridiculous investigation and assessment of civil fines and forfeitures. And really, the lawfare that was used against Trump was really to prevent these types of investigations from ever occurring. So we just have to be patient and let the evidence and facts and the law play out. Yeah, well, mortgage fraud is a very common crime that's prosecuted federally. It happens all over the country. It's probably a daily occurrence that someone is indicted in this country for mortgage fraud. And just think of it this way, you are not telling the truth on a mortgage application, whether it's your collateral is worth less, or in this case, the residence that you want the mortgage loan for is not going to be your primary residence. There's lots of reasons to claim the primary residence. One, it's a better rate. Primary resident homeowners are less likely to default because it's their home, right? But secondary homeowners do, and that's just data. So there's advantages to it. And so now that's up to 30 years in federal prison. Now, I will say that the average sentence is between 2 and 4 years in federal prison, but it's a very easily proven offense, and it's also a very commonly proven offense. So there's a lot of experience inside of this Department of Justice to bring these charges forward.
That's all for today. Thank you. If you want global news to keep you up to date on any new developments, please subscribe our channel and forward our content with your friends on social media and email. Thank you very much for keep supporting me. Stay safe, be blessed. Namaste.
Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.